April 3rd, 2024. Daniel 11 in portrait. And at the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots and with horsemen and with many ships, and he shall enter into the countries and shall overflow and pass over. Please see this link. When was the last time you saw the slashing of an art painting with a box cutter and it turns out to be very powerful biblical symbolism? This event that occurred recently, see the link below, above, is a serious reminder of the lingering effects of an epic letter to Lordy Rothchld and set in motion the creation of a nation, state, and Jewish homeland. That declaration by Lord Balfour in 1917 was some declaration. Yet the portrait slashing was recorded. This is saying aforetime, something is up. Is it that the long-held resentment of partitioning and two-state solution, rearing, boiling point? Seems the Lord Balfour Declaration is a reminder that the former protectorate remains in protagonist, parlous state of affairs of the land of the Philistines. Others will say, oh, Palestine was a British protectorate of that era. Nothing has changed, and what else matters, and that is that. Regardless, the canvas carve-up of Lordy Balfour is something to be mindful. Why? Like the rumblings of a volcano indicate an eruption is imminent. And this portrait paints a picture of Daniel 11:40 because the king of the south has come to the point of venting a lot of steam. It says, and at the time of the end shall the king of the south contend, push with him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, chariots with horsemen and with many ships, and he shall enter into the countries and shall overflow and pass through. If you know your history and am familiar with book history, the canvas portrait carve-up is symbolic of portents to happen, and Daniel 11:40 can begin to make sense. Some history. Here is the 1917 map. Please see this link. The 1917 map says a lot and expresses some of the reasons for intensity of the tension. Many shrug their shoulders and say glibly, this is the natural order of things today. But hey, what if, in fact, you are seeing a 10th expansion program of an ancient prophecy of Genesis 9:27 and misevents happening right before your very eyes? Don't forget, it's written, God shall enlarge Japheth, he shall dwell in the tents of Shem. Canaan shall be a servant. No other prophecy than Genesis 9:27 equals the year 1948. Genesis 9:27 relates to the events of 48, 67, and 80, and an additional event, parable of the fig tree, Luke 21:29. Says, and he spake to them a parable, behold the fig tree and all the trees, when they now shoot forth, you see and know of your own selves that summer is nigh at hand. Others describe the present day territorial conditions as a continual land grab, and the removal of the Philistines has a lot of people on edge. The following history report gnaws in the minds of the king of the south. See here. Fig tree. The phenomenon of the fig tree parable leads us all to the imprecation of World War III. This is true to the uttermost because World War III equals Daniel 11:40-45. And at the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, chariots, horsemen with many ships, and he shall enter into the countries and shall overflow and pass over. Today's generation are very aware of the creation of the state in 1948, but most are unfamiliar with the events of 1896 with Theodore Herzl. Some recognize the 1917 Balfour Declaration, but not its biblical implications to Daniel 11:40. Then there's the famous Six-Day War of 1967, claiming the Temple Mount, and this was 50 years after the Rothschild guy got the letter from Lordy Balfour. The sequence of events from 1948 to 1980 culminated in Jerusalem no longer being trodden down of the nations, when the capital of the state transfers from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem that very year. In fact, the Good Book records this specific event of 1980 in Luke 21, 24 to 31, and the generation alive at this fulfillment will witness the return of He who made. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles, or nations, until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. See the link here. And there shall be signs in the sun, and the moon, and the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations, with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring. Men's hearts failing them for fear, and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth. For the powers of heaven shall be shaken, and then shall they see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. You will also notice He who made said something else in respect to this event. There is to be the shooting forth of the fig tree. You will recall the fig tree cursed by He who made in Mark 11, 20 to 21. So ask yourself, who is blessing the cursed fig tree? Why does it relate to the prophecy of Genesis 9:27 and the events from 1896 to 1980? When these things begin to come to pass, then look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. And he spake to them a parable. Behold the fig tree and all the trees, when they now shoot forth, ye see and know of your own selves that summer is nigh at hand. So likewise ye, when ye see these things come to pass, know ye that the kingdom of God is nigh at hand. Daniel 11:40 in portrait. Back to the shredded Lordy Balfour portrait and the raw implications to Daniel 11:40. From the biblical perspective, what does this act of vandalism represent? It is this. There is absolutely a heightened abhorrence about how things of the old protectorate have transpired, and what the Balfour portrait represents is a 10 expansion program that holds no end. Those familiar with Daniel 11 know God said the king of the south will push at the king of the north. Daniel 11:40, at the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him. The king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, chariots and with horsemen with many ships, and he shall enter into the countries and shall overflow and pass over. Is the inevitable push by the king of the south and the response by the king of the north all to do with the territorial declaration and something to look forward to? Answer, no and yes. Something to look forward to? Emphatic no. What has to be understood is the great loss that occurs because the timing of Daniel 11:40 to 45 occurs with the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, then to be followed by the many supernatural events, such as the rise of the first and second beast of Revelation 13. It includes the 7 trumpets and the 3 woes, to name a few. As something to look forward to? Yes, for it is written, the generation that sees the events will witness the return of the Son of Man. Summary? Most who share the regular blah from the book of Daniel and Revelation is mostly superficial talk, in most cases, a misapplication of history and prophetic application. The fact is this, very few, if any, will see the biblical significance of the canvas carve-up, let alone relate to the red spray paint and its meaning. The other thing about this portrait symbolism is the third temple. That's the capstone of the land dispute. And will it affect Al-Aqsa Mosque? Inevitably. Perhaps that's the push. Maybe something far less conspicuous triggers a big push by the king of the south to vent their bitterness. The real issue of Daniel 11:40-45, the eighth king. Yes, the real issue is the dispute between the king of the south and the king of the north is not World War III, and that's quite tragic. But the real issue is it brings onto the scene the eighth king as mentioned in Revelation 17:11. So this short discussion is not something trifling to be ignored. The indisputable fact is Jerusalem city was trodden down of the nations since AD 70. And in the time of the fig tree shooting forth, the work of Theodore Herzl from 1896 Congress to establish the state of Zion, and then the Balfour Declaration, 1917. And yeah, to be sure, Balfour tapped the money, merchant, extraordinaries. But hey, listen up. That is in all reality a peripheral issue, regardless of having deep-rooted global mercantile influence. God also said the global influence is related to the 10 kings, 10 king, 10 scenario of Revelation 17 and 13:1. More on that later. But 1948, then 67, and 1980 are events that prepared the blood-stained soil for one last doozy of a stoush. The participants of that war are stated in Daniel 11:40, and that's World War III. Then the king of the north moves his tents to the glorious holy mountain. Now, with that point in mind, it is to be noticed, the majority of neighbors of the great city, while biding their time and seething, one thing is certain. They are building up a full kettle of steam. The portrait carve-up is a symbolism of the long-held history of two major monotheistic religions. That declaration seems the son of Chuck III will lead to the not-so-obvious intent of the letter of Lordy Balfour to Lordy Rothchld. Willie, the son next in line to the House of Windsor, it is said, has the Davidic bloodlines, as they claim. But note carefully, also has the legal justification because of the Balfour declaration to be king of Jerusalem. This is the spiritual battle of the eighth king with the seventh king of Revelation 17:10, and hence the deadly wound in Revelation 13. The Holy Roman Empire will be very chuffed because behind their scenes is the long-acclaimed grand monarch of Catholic prophecy, the strong man to reunite Europe. What? Say that again? Yeah, because there exists the invisible fine print within the Balfour Declaration, and it is this: Lordy Balfour, on behalf of British royalty, has already staked legal claim in 1917 via that declaration that their monarchy has right of passage to place a royal on the throne in the great city. That's the legitimacy for royal presence on the throne in Jerusalem. And Willie has Davidic lineage. Let that sink in. Those who say nope need to answer the following. So how do you explain Daniel 11:45? That God says the king of the north enters the glorious holy mountain, and none shall help him. Right? And he shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas in the glorious holy mountain, yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. Is that not the same as Revelation 17:10? And there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. God said the 7th king of Revelation 17 lasts a short space. God said the king of the north, Daniel 11:45, comes to his end, and none shall help him. Conclusion: the one and same 7th king is the king of the north. The 7th king is not the Antichrist. The Antichrist is the 8th king. Let that sink in. Tent expansion program. When you read Genesis 9:27, it is essentially stating that the tents will be enlarged by way of Old Testament theology, and this translates as rabbinic. Why? The answer is in light about what Paul stated about how the divisions are broken down when one accepts he who made. And there is no man, woman, Jew or Greek or barbarian, for all are one in Christ. And how this translates into the New Testament is that the land cannot be claimed on the basis of the Abrahamic unconditional covenant, since that now relates to the New Jerusalem above, and those who believe in the true rock, and he is the foundation stone. And if he is rejected, there is no unconditional covenant, only a grim future awaiting the lake. If the other city, as Paul said, was in slavery and represents self-righteousness, this was done away by way of the 70 weeks of Daniel 9 in reference to the people, the city, and the temple. How? Because in Daniel 9 and the terminus of the 70 weeks, God said it was then, midst of the week, Messiah was cut off, that everlasting righteousness was ushered in, and was rejected. Jesus saith unto her, Woman, believe me, the hour cometh, when ye shall neither in this mountain nor yet at Jerusalem worship the Father. So what Jesus told the woman at the well stands. The hour cometh that the worship is in spirit and truth. Since that hour is come to pass, neither Jerusalem city nor Mount Gerizim play any significant role in the worship of the Father. That also includes the Mecca city of the Friday keepers. When Zionist Christians backed the fig tree that was cursed, never again would bear fruit in the Lord's vineyard, this only proves that the vineyard is now in spirit and in truth in the form of the parabolic time clock. Laodicea misses the point of the 10th expansion program in the summer of the fig tree. Why? Laodicea rejected the announcement of the fulfillment of Luke 21:24 in their World Sabbath School Quarterly in 1980. Here's the link. If Laodicea had not rejected the announcement, would they know the meaning of the parable of the fig tree in Luke 21:29 and the 10th expansion program? Of course. Conclusion: when the unconditional Abrahamic covenant is used to grant land to a spewed out people, Matthew 23:38, it basically goes against everlasting righteousness or Daniel 9, and for that, what occurs is it enthrones self-righteousness in the great city with all its accompanying atrocities in the name of the old covenant. Does Galatians 4 make sense now?